Hey guys, it's Therese Abel. I'm in Oxford, here for this federal press conference. I know a lot of y'all have had a lot of questions throughout the day. They should be answered pretty soon. We're waiting on the officials to come out and brief us on what happened this morning in that big raid you've heard so much about.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you all for attending today's press conference. We're getting ready to begin shortly. So what I'm going to ask you all to do to please silence your phones. After they're finished speaking, we're going to allow possibly 3 to 5 questions, depending on the nature of the questions, and we'll begin shortly. Does anyone have any questions? Thank you. Want to start?
Good afternoon. I'd like to thank you all for coming here today. I am especially grateful and honored that we have the Deputy Director of the FBI, Andrew Bailey, is here with us today. We have the Special Agent in charge of the Jackson Field Division, Robert Eichhoff, here as well, and Robert Mims, who apparently doesn't want to be in the frame. He's our AUSA who's actually prosecuting this case. He's the lead prosecutor on the case. And if y'all just bear with us, we have a lot of information to get to you. And at the end of that, we're going to take a few questions, so don't worry. But we're here today to talk about some incredibly serious allegations that mark a it's just a monumental betrayal of public trust. And that's what we're talking about here today. We're here today to announce the indictment and arrest of 20 individuals, most of them law enforcement officers in the Mississippi Delta region. The indictments generally allege the taking of bribes to attempt to aid and abet drug trafficking, as well as associated crimes. The first indictment that I'll talk about involves a conspiracy whereby law enforcement officers and their accomplices are alleged to have agreed to provide safe passage for illegal narcotics and drug proceeds to the Mississippi Delta region, and ultimately on the last of those runs into Memphis itself. And they did this in return for bribe payments, for money. They are also indicted for related firearms offenses and, of course, individual counts related to specific runs throughout the Mississippi Delta. Indicted in this conspiracy are the following individuals, and when I'm giving you this list of places of employment, a lot of them are still employed, or were up to today, in those places. But the places I'm referring to where they're employed, that's really during the times that are relevant to the charges in their indictment. So indicted in this particular conspiracy were Brandon Addison, who's a Mississippi law enforcement officer employed by the Hollandale Police Department and the Humphreys County Sheriff's Office at times relevant to the indictment. Javari Howard, a Mississippi law enforcement officer employed by the Metcalf Police Department and later, during the course of the investigation, the Hollandale Police Department. Milton Gaston, the elected sheriff of Washington County, Mississippi. Truron Grayson, who was employed by the Humphreys County Sheriff's Office. Bruce Williams, who was the elected, or is at the moment, the elected sheriff of Humphreys County, Mississippi. Sean Williams, who was employed by the Yazoo City Police Department. Dexter Franklin, who was employed by the Washington County Sheriff's Office. Wendell Johnson, who was employed by the Bolivar County Sheriff's Office. Now, I want to take note on this particular name. When you see the indictments themselves, you're going to have 22 names. I'm about to explain why we're telling you 20 people are now charged. And so this next individual who appears in the indictment, I want to make this very clear, based on information obtained today, the charges against Amber Holmes have been dismissed. She's no longer charged in this case and is no longer implicated in any wrongdoing related to this investigation. The remaining co-defendants on that first indictment, the large one, are Marcus Nolan, Hassan Roach, Jeremy Salas, Torio Chaz Wiseman, Pierre Lakes, and Derek Wallace. The first four of those individuals I named escorted alleged drugs on runs on a run to Memphis, and likewise the last two persons I named, Mr. Lakes and Mr. Wallace. Wallace joined the conspiracy on a trip that was taken by a number of the co-conspirators to Miami, Florida. A separate indictment charges a conspiracy as follows. It's essentially the attempt to aid and abet the transport and distribution of illegal narcotics in return for bribes, related offenses regarding the carrying of firearms while doing that, and that the crux of that indictment was the transport of what the defendants thought were 25 kilograms of cocaine through the Mississippi Delta. And those defendants are Jamario Sanford, who was employed at the Greenwood Police Department, Marvin Flowers, who was employed at the Sunflower County Sheriff's Department. And again, this is the second of those names I mentioned to you. You'll see in an indictment the name Taquana Rucker. And again, based on information obtained today, the charges against Ms. Rucker have been dismissed. She's no longer charged in this case and is no longer implicated in any wrongdoing in this investigation. A further indictment charges Martavius Moore, who's a police officer in Greenville, Mississippi, with aiding and abetting the transport of what he thought was 25 kilograms of cocaine and carrying a firearm, of course, during that. Marquavius Bankhead was a patrolman with the Mississippi Highway Patrol, and he has been indicted, and he's no longer with the Highway Patrol. He has recently resigned from the Highway Patrol. He was indicted for, again, aiding and abetting the transport of 25 kilograms of cocaine, or what he thought was that. Chaka Gaines with the Greenville Police Department was again charged with attempting to aid and abet the transportation of narcotics, essentially to traffic drugs through the Delta, and was likewise charged with a firearm offense related to that. DeQuarian Smith with the Humphreys County Sheriff's Department and the Isola Police Department was likewise charged with conspiracy to aid and abet the possession, transportation, and distribution of illegal narcotics. Finally, and this is always important to say at one of these, I'd remind everybody present that an indictment is just that, it's an allegation. That indictment, those allegations have to be proven in a court of law. Everybody in this country operates under the presumption of innocence, and nothing's changed about that. That being said, there's 18th century philosopher, writer, you name it, he did a lot, named Edmund Burke, and there's a quote that is often associated with him, and that is that the only thing necessary for evil to flourish is for good men to do nothing. And I am before you today profusely thanking the good men of the FBI, because they'll tell you a little bit more about the investigation itself, but this was a years-long investigation. This wasn't anything that happened overnight. They invested a lot of time, a lot of resources into conducting a very thorough investigation that continues today. And I cannot thank them enough. The work put in by Assistant United States Attorney Robert Mims has been phenomenal. And I just appreciate the fact that good men and good women are standing in that breach to try to restore confidence in our law enforcement agencies in Mississippi. And at this time, I'm very much honored to invite Deputy Director Andrew Bailey to make a few comments.
Good afternoon, FBI Deputy Director Andrew Bailey. I am present here today to support the mission of the Federal Bureau of Investigation and to enhance the cooperation and coordination with our proud partners at the United States Attorney's Office. I want to emphasize that my presence is to underline the importance and the magnitude of this case. This operation and these indictments are a success, but they point to a troubling reality. We're talking about 14 current or former law enforcement officers, 6 co-conspirators who are alleged to have sold out the public, promoted crimes that they should have been investigating and stopped, and instead of working to stem the flow of dangerous controlled substances, the evidence will show they took bribes to facilitate the distribution of controlled substances. They betrayed the trust that the public placed in them, disgraced the badge, and undermined the hard work of good law enforcement officers across this state and across the region. This corruption permeated all levels. It extended across multiple counties and multiple jurisdictions in the state of Mississippi and beyond. But the Department of Justice and its subcomponent, the FBI, will not allow the wrongdoing and wrongdoers to get away with it. We will stop these kinds of disgraceful and shameful abuses of public office, and will prove that we will not tolerate corruption amongst America's criminal justice system. I want to acknowledge the brave men and women of the FBI Jackson Field Office and the incredible work they did leading this multi-year complex investigation. I want to thank members of the SWAT and HRT teams for their professionalism in apprehending the suspects, these corrupt officers, without incident. I want to thank our state and local partners for supporting this team effort. I want to thank the Criminal Investigation Division's Public Corruption Unit for leading these efforts. I want to thank the United States Attorney, Clay Joyner, for his partnership in this endeavor, and Attorney General Bondi and the entire DOJ for their leadership and guidance in these matters. This administration has worked tirelessly to support the FBI's work across the country, and we are grateful. As to the broader significance, public corruption is a crime against the entire community, against all citizens, and against the rule of law itself. It leads to the loss of trust in law enforcement and erodes the justice system, thereby endangering citizens. Mississippi communities deserve better. The American public deserves better. Let this be a lesson for those sworn to serve the public, that if you're a good law enforcement officer, the FBI will always stand with you. But for those corrupt individuals who abuse their office, we will come for you and hold you accountable. To all Americans listening, the FBI will never stop protecting from these kinds of abuses of authority. Thank you for being here today, and I'd like to turn it over to the head of the Jackson Field Office, SAC Icon.
Robert Eichhoff, Special Agent in Charge of FBI here in Mississippi. FBI Jackson is proud to announce a multi-year investigation that exemplifies the FBI's dedication to restoring the public's trust. As alleged in the indictments, this investigation began after FBI Jackson received information on allegations of systemic law enforcement corruption that crossed multiple counties in the Delta of Mississippi. These corrupt law enforcement officers provided protection for those whom they believed were drug traffickers in exchange for bribe payments. Each of the law enforcement officers arrested had taken an oath to protect and serve their respective communities, an oath that they violated. The positions of these arrested officers range from patrol officers up to police chiefs and sheriffs. This type of corruption strikes at the heart of community. It erodes public confidence and undermines the strength of law enforcement integrity. Earlier this month, the FBI responded to the mass killing in Leland, Mississippi. During many interviews, we learned of the community's distrust of select law enforcement officers due to the concerns of corruption. Law enforcement is only effective when the community they protect can trust that law enforcement officers are honestly serving the community's interest. Mississippians deserve and rightfully expect officers to obey their oath. The FBI is committed to working in partnership with the United States Attorney's Office to investigate officers who violate the oath, the law, and the public's trust. We would not be here today if it was not for the dedication of the men and women of the FBI, and in particular the case team that have devoted years focused on bringing trust, renewing trust, restoring trust of law enforcement, specifically within the Delta region. Their commitment is born out of our mission, which is to protect the American people and uphold the Constitution. We do our work with rigor, and we do it with a mindfulness of doing the right thing the right way. They did that. I want to thank the United States Attorney's Office, and specifically noting the Acting United States Attorney Clay Joyner and Robert Mims for the work that they have done over the years, working shoulder to shoulder with us on this investigation. And for the United States Marshal Service for their support in this extraordinary arrest operation today. I want to thank Deputy Director Bailey for his attendance. It goes to show the commitment at all levels of the FBI to ensure that we are holding to account all public officials, but especially law enforcement officers. There's a trust prescribed to those who wear a badge. We as a country have heard many instances of that trust being violated, and the FBI is committed to ensuring that we are holding people accountable to the law and to their oath, and earning and maintaining the public's trust. I want to thank the Public Corruption Unit at our headquarters. Without their support, without their enduring commitment to supporting us, we would not have been here today. To the Critical Incident Response Group, who houses our HRT, our Crisis Management Unit, and many other units that were needed to support an operation of this scale, this magnitude. And then the multiple field offices and their SWAT teams, their hostage negotiators, and their tactical operational specialists that helped us man this operation. So with your help, we'll continue to ensure that people who work in positions of public trust will serve the public and not themselves. I call on all American citizens that if you are aware of, if you're experiencing any instances of corruption, please report that to the FBI. You can contact us at 1-800-CALL-FBI or online at tips.fbi.gov. Thank you.
At this time, we'll take a few questions.
Jackson Advocate newspaper.
Yes, ma'am.
Will there be another roundup of people? Because the sheriff in Sunflower County says that he's expecting some more people to probably be picked up.
Okay, so if there was, that's certainly not something I would say out loud right now. So That's the answer to that.
How much were the two indictments sort of connected? Were they part of the same broader conspiracy, both sets of indictments, or were they kind of individual
So they're,
investigations?
I mean, the indictments are divided up by the people who engaged together in a course of crime for the conspiracy indictments. And you've heard that there are a number of indictments of individuals who were charged. And so and again, I apologize because some of you probably can get frustrated with my answers because we're not going to go into a lot of specifics about the case, obviously, or the methods used. But as SAC ICOP has already told you, what happened here is the case started, the genesis of the case was people, oftentimes some criminals who, when arrested, they were complaining about having to pay bribes to various individuals. And when the FBI followed up on that, lo and behold, found out that was the case. There's the large conspiracy. Those were people that acted in concert at different times with each other for that purpose. The smaller conspiracy that had 3 people listed, that's now 2. That was again those people acting in concert together, and just basically wherever the facts and the evidence led, those were the people that ended up being involved in the investigation.
Mr. Joyner, Martin Staunton, Fox
Yes, sir.
13 Memphis. I've heard Deputy Director Bailey and the Jackson field office and yourself say that these officers were transporting what they believed to be drugs. Once you were tipped, did you guys set up a sting to catch them, or were they really working for drug dealers?
I think you could probably characterize it as a sting, but again, the original complaints that began the investigation were from drug dealers. And of course, we're not used to carrying around 25 kilos of cocaine in a briefcase to, play around with on investigation. So we did what we did to close the circle and determine if they were actually doing this or not, would be the answer to that.
Can you say when the investigation actually started? You said it was years ago.
It's years long. I don't have the date in front of me right now, but it's a very long investigation. It's been going on for several years.
Would you
How
characterize?
large
I'm sorry.
How large were the bribes?
Some individual. When the indictment is made public, you'll actually see some of that in there. But some individuals got $20,000. One individual got $37,000 and change. So there were some significant bribe amounts. Yes, sir.
Whistleblower Project. I love the corruption that you all are doing. Who holds the law accountable when y'all break the law? Because I work for the Department of Justice and I reported corruption within the Department of Justice and nobody has gotten back with me. I haven't had any investigations. I was illegally terminated with falsified medical records. I was offered $300,000. Nobody's, my whole family has been ruined. So when you all speak of corruption, who holds you all accountable when you all break the law?
Various and sundry inspector generals, for one. For instance,
I've been ignored.
if you were to, and sir, I apologize, I don't know the facts of your individual case, but if you were to come to the FBI with anything resembling a credible allegation that, hey, Clay Joyner, I bribed him, he took money, I fully expect the FBI to investigate the heck out of me if they find that accusation to be credible, as they would with anybody. That'd be the shortest way for me to answer that.
Dark Horse Press. Hi. Would you guys characterize this as like a network of bad officers, or are each of these guys kind of working in their own situations?
What you'll see in particularly the conspiracy indictments, that's what a conspiracy implies. Definitively is a network of people working together for a common purpose. And here we've already identified what that common purpose was. So yes, to a degree, there's a network. And for instance, I would say that within that network, again, without getting into too much detail, for instance, on that large scale indictment, the last 6 names that I read, well, that's what we internally refer to as the Memphis crew. Because when those drugs got to the state line, those folks were recruited by someone who's already in the conspiracy that knew those folks would do that. And so that's how they became added on, because they were a member of one of the conspirators' network.
Can I do a follow-up? Would you say that is there a cartel or a gang group or anything like that that is feeding these drugs in, or is this case-by-case basis?
Well, okay, so Yeah, there's gang activity in the Delta. I mean, we all unfortunately saw what happened in Leland, which is just an abject tragedy, and is frankly infuriating that can happen in any town in America, much less in that town in this district. So yes, there's gang activity. As far as your question about the cartels, I'm trying to think of the best way to answer that. We don't, in this particular investigation, no, we do not have a direct link to the cartels. But, everybody in the room is not exactly, a carefully hidden secret at this point that for roughly 4 years, the border was pretty wide open. And you had in addition to, the people pouring across that everybody kind of talks about, you had narcotics pouring across in almost unprecedented amounts, some of them manufactured in factories in Mexico. And, if you talk to anybody that is involved in drug investigations, they'll tell you that the price of crystal methamphetamine, for instance, that it's in an incredibly pure form. Well, the reason that the prices of that are the lowest, or were at one time, now they're going back up because the border's been sealed off to a degree. But the prices of those at one time previously had fallen to unprecedented lows because there was just such a glut of supply that was pouring across the border. So while, we don't have nobody from the cartels indicted in this case, whenever you see drugs being trafficked in Mississippi or really elsewhere in the United States, you can count on, if you're able to track it back far enough, yeah, they're more than likely going to have a cartel connection.
I know the indictment was just unsealed.
Give me 1 second. Let me get this going.
Yeah, February 18th, Brian, but for the officers and sheriffs who were being investigated, were they suspended at any time during this investigation? And a second part question would be, did you receive any challenges or go through anything with this investigation as far as getting to this point? Like, what was your challenges getting up to this point in the investigation?
Okay, so that one I'm probably not going to answer other than to say yes, there were a bunch of challenges. And they were challenging. But other than that, give me your first question again. I'm sorry.
Were any of these officers or sheriffs who were in the investigation suspended?
So that's a great question. And the answer is, at times, for other reasons unrelated to the investigation, we may have had one or two. But, and it's the frustrating thing for us, and it may be a frustrating thing to hear, especially when you hear that this was a years-long investigation. But we had to weigh two things against each other. Of course, you had what we, at various times we came to know that different officers, that we alleged that they were very much corrupt officers. But we could not go in, obviously, and arrest one of those officers, reveal the methods, reveal, the people who were actually doing the hands-on work with those officers. We just couldn't do that because whenever you did that, at whatever moment that took place, the investigation would instantly shut down, and you'd have insurmountable obstacles to ever kind of finding the rest of the web or the system of corruption. So essentially, no, we did not make an approach to have them suspended because that would have absolutely identified the fact that an investigation was taking place, and we just simply could not do that and continue the investigation.
I know the indictment was just unsealed, but can you say a little bit more? Providing protection, was this during drug deals as they were taking place?
So it's more of, again, without trying not to get into too much detail about the investigation itself, but essentially what you had were what everybody involved thought were drug runs of a vehicle containing a large amount of either illegal narcotics or a large amount of cash proceeds from the trafficking of illegal narcotics. And essentially, by and large, for the most part, the bribes were for protection. So in Mississippi, you had marked vehicles and uniformed officers driving down the road, protecting what everyone understood to be a drug shipment.
You said in the beginning that this is a step to restore the public's trust. If this is the initial step, what's the next step?
Well, the next step will be, either, depending on how it goes, a batch of guilty pleas, a series of trials, What the public needs to see, I think what all of us would want to see, whenever you have any kind of corruption that we're dealing with, is accountability. And that's what the next step is delivering accountability for everyone who's betrayed the public's trust in this matter.
So it's the Attorney General office instead of place.
For those of us in the Memphis market, real quick, what happened to the drugs when they got to Memphis? Were y'all able to track any of that
So
out of there?
again, those trips weren't actually drugs.
Okay.
They was, again, what everyone thought were drugs on those trips. Is that accurate, Robert?
That's correct.
So,
Is the Attorney General office also a place where you could go report corruption?
absolutely. They have a public integrity unit, and you can absolutely go there. Yes, sir.
Chris Fields with the LET. So when will these individuals go to court? You know?
I haven't seen the court dates that were set yet, but typically the first trial setting is going to be within 70 days of their initial appearance.
Are they still in custody?
No, my understanding they're not.
How many
I
states
think
were
bonds
involved?
were granted across the board. I can't really speak to who's made a bond and who hasn't at this point because, quite frankly, I don't have the information in front of me. Yes, ma'am.
Laura from Zealand. What is going to happen with so many police officers, and how is safety going to be ensured for the public, especially in Washington County, since our sheriff was one of the sheriffs arrested, and we're still in an active investigation?
I understand that concern. The flip side of that concern is what happens to public safety when the people that we're entrusting law enforcement to are doing the opposite of that. But I absolutely, I don't mean to be glib. I absolutely understand the question and the concern behind the question. And I guess I'll talk about it in terms of a specific case. When that shooting took place, that horrified all of us, but as you say, you live in Leland, so you're living it.
And one
in
of
that
the
community.
takedowns was 2 doors down from my house, and I homeschool. So my kids were home when the ATF and the FBI showed up and took down 2 people on the corner of Sycamore and Cypress. So it's 2 doors from my house.
And so I'll say there's a couple of fronts to restoring faith and to, while you're doing that, ensuring public safety. And Leland is a great example because the police department doesn't have a whole lot of staff at the police department. And so when that shooting took place under this gentleman's leadership right here, the FBI came crashing in along with other federal agencies, ATF, the marshals, you name it. And they've done incredible work on that investigation thus far. And so I think, to put it bluntly, where there is a breach, I think, yes, temporarily, there's going to be some manpower issues. I don't want to say there's any really good news from this other than the fact that people are being held to account for their actions. But, one thing to look at is no department has lost a huge swath of people from that particular department. You've got, a few people in Greenwood, a couple of people in Greenwood. It's kind of different departments are losing small portions of that department. We're not decimating any entire department anywhere. But I absolutely understand the concern, but you've got agencies like the FBI, ATF, U.S. Marshals, you name it, and they're stepping into that breach. And I don't have any better example than what happened in Leland and the fact that they came, it was unreal the speed with which they provided resources. The SAC, I think, that thing happened late Friday night, and I don't know how early it was Saturday morning that he called me, but it was early enough that he woke me up. And just, the resources started pouring in. So I think there will be people to step into that breach temporarily. Just really a couple more.
Do you expect convictions tied to these officers to be overturned, or any of those cases to be reopened? If this, corruption has been going on for years, that'll bring a lot of other cases into question.
And quite frankly, again, I understand that. I think it's possible. I have not, by the same token, we had to hold this investigation just an incredibly close hold on the facts, on the investigation, on the methods and means. And so we couldn't share that with our partners. An incredibly valuable partner to us is the district attorney's office in Washington County. He is a lawman through and through. And I called him first thing this morning as the initial arrests were being made, at that point, we could, essentially reveal it, because the cat's pretty much out of the bag anyway. And so, one of the first phone calls I made was to District Attorney Wayne Richardson. And he appreciated the information, and I'm sure, they're taking a look at that right now, how it affects previous caseload and current caseload.
Last question.
I don't know how long you've been employed in your position, but within the last 20 years, how many times has something happened like this for officers being arrested?
So arrested on this scale, well, I'll tell you how long I've been employed in my position. As a prosecutor for just 1 year shy of 30 years. I used to be the young guy, and somehow this happened. But I've been with this office since 2008. I was a state prosecutor previous to that. But we have had occasions to investigate, indict, and prosecute law enforcement agencies, officers, a number of times over the years. Usually, honestly, this part of the reason to your question earlier, part of the reason you couldn't divulge it is when one of these happens, everybody that's doing this kind of thing goes to ground for several years. And so whoever you're going to get, you better get them right then, because you're not going to be able to for a while. But it's happened, on a 5-year, 10-year cycle. You'll get, not that long ago, I think it was probably, how long ago was the Sheriff of Tallahatchie County? I think 2019. So 2019, the Sheriff of Tallahatchie County was investigated for similar occurrences. And so it's not an outlier. When there's it can be corruption, it can be, physical. We just had an officer plead guilty earlier in the year and be sentenced for the physical abuse. An officer essentially attacked someone that he was, there to either talk to or arrest. And that's not what happened, not how it happened, and he was indicted for that. So whenever there's misconduct, whatever kind of misconduct that is, if it's criminal, we don't shy away. I absolutely support 100%, absolutely 100% good, honest police officers. That hasn't changed here today. But what we're not going to tolerate at all is dishonest police officers.
Sir, on July the 17th.
And I apologize, everybody. If we can make this the last question.
All right. On July the 17th, 2025, the Panola County Sheriff's Department was raided by the Office of the Attorney General Public Integrity Division. Does this in any way have any tie to that investigation?
No, it does not.
Okay.
All right, and thank y'all all for coming out. I apologize for cutting it off, but I've been up since about 2, so thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Subsequently, after this, we'll be providing a press release to all of your agencies.
Has the press release gone out yet?
No, sir, we're getting ready to send
Okay.
it out.
Can I get a card from somebody?
No. Thank you all.
You wouldn't let me get a card, this is the department. I'm sure I get a card.
Okay, guys, so that is the end of the press conference. What you heard was basically, I'm going to try and boil it down for you, but you had officers and deputies from agents all over the Delta, including a former trooper, who were all arrested or indicted and arrested for taking bribes, for escorting what they thought were drugs. This has been a years-long investigation, and of course it started early this morning that they started making arrests in this case all throughout the Delta. So that's why we were hearing little bits and pieces, but we couldn't get the whole thing, of course, until today, until this afternoon. So that's what the press conference was about. Obviously, this case will be going on for quite some time. There are a lot of ramifications when you have something with multiple officers involved like this, just like we saw with the Goon Squad in Rankin County. This is going to be a similar thing, but of course, many more officers involved. As this develops, we will keep you updated. Thank you guys for tuning in, and I am going to go do some work. Have a great night.